So, remember that map that I showed you in the YouTube short last night about the most hated MLB teams? Yeah, now I'm going to analyze it a little bit more. So, I think our getaways from that are that the most hated teams are the Yankees, the Astros, and the Dodgers. The Astros and Dodgers does make sense due to the relative success of both teams, making pretty much everyone else in their division hate them. But the Yankees aren't powerhouses the same way, yet there's still some trends you could see. First of all, this map does not include Canadian provinces. There was a map from 2017 that included Canadian provinces with some surprises. For example, the Padres were somehow the most hated team in the Northwest Territories, which means there must have been a lot of Dodgers fans up there. That's odd. And meanwhile, the White Sox are the most hated team in the Nunavut territories, which either means that there's a lot of Cubs fans there or Twins fans there. But that map is outdated because it was made in 2017, and this new map was made in 2021. So, not totally up to date, but still the most up-to-date map that we have. So, looking at the map, the Yankees are the most hated team in every state in New England. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, they totally make sense to me. They're in the Red Sox fan club, and the Red Sox's biggest and most historical rival is the Yankees. When you think of MLB teams hating each other, you probably think of Red Sox versus Yankees. It is very intense between the two. The two have met in the postseason multiple times, even recently. God, it's cold. And you know, the two teams just have a long history of not liking each other. Also, yes, it is freezing. It's 32 degrees outside. And we haven't had a lot of that this winter, so I'm shivering. Anyway, Connecticut is the one state, though, that could really go either way. Why do I say that Connecticut could go either way? The reason why I say Connecticut could go either way is because Connecticut is, as we know, the battleground between the Yankees fans and Red Sox fans. The New York metropolitan area does extend rather deep into Connecticut. But then you meet the line in which Red Sox territory comes in, and like warm air and cold air, there is a firestorm along that line in Connecticut. I guess that despite major cities such as Bridgeport and Hartford actually leaning towards Yankees, and I think New Haven also leans towards Yankees, I guess there's so many people in the other half of the state that support the Red Sox to enough of an extent to tip the entire state over into hating the Yankees. And New York and New Jersey respond in kind by their most hated team being the Boston Red Sox. But once you get to Pennsylvania, there's a new enemy, the New York Mets. That's also the case in Delaware. But why? Well, the Phillies hating the Mets is not as well known as the Yankees hating the Red Sox, but the Phillies are still the biggest rival of the New York Mets. Now, in New York and New Jersey, the hate of the Red Sox from the Yankees is enough to make those states hate the Yankees more. Plus, the Phillies actually have a fan club within New Jersey itself, although it's still, the state is pushed over into hating the Red Sox. But once you get to Pennsylvania, they hate the Mets the most. Consider the fact that the Pirates don't have that many strong rivalries, and the Phillies have this mega rivalry with the Mets, and it makes sense. Delaware also makes sense because Delaware is almost entirely consumed within the metropolitan area of Philadelphia, also known as the Delaware Valley. Maryland was another state that threw me in for a loop. Why the Yankees exactly? So the Orioles have their most strongest rivalry with the Nationals, but it's not mainly due to what happened on field, it's due to off field. The Orioles owner tried to prevent a baseball team from ever coming to Washington, D.C., calling it an intrusion of his territory. So, damn, that's harsh. But what you gotta understand is that the Baltimore and DC areas both take up Maryland. So there are a lot of Nationals fans, especially in Southern Maryland. In Northern Maryland, you're under the influence of the Orioles, and then once you get to extreme northeastern Pennsylvania, you could come under the influence of the Philadelphia Phillies. Also, in extreme western Maryland, you could see yourself as a Pirates fan, but that's about it. So, as you can see, a lot of Maryland is Orioles territory. So why do they hate the Orioles so much? I mean, why do they hate the Yankees so much is what I meant to say. Well, they probably hate the Yankees because it's the best team to hate for them. Like, the Red Sox and the Rays and the Blue Jays, yeah, they're division rivals, yes, but when you think about it, the Yankees are like known as this dominant team, and that really makes a lot of teams just hate the Yankees, and people hate the Yankees. So that's my assumption as to why. In Virginia, the most hated team is the Atlanta Braves. My assumption is that the Nationals' biggest rivalry is with the Braves, and most of Virginia is either in Nationals territory or they aren't really even baseball fans at all. Hence why there's no baseball team in the Virginia Beach area. But then there was a bit of a surprise down south. So North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee have the most hated team as the New York Mets. Now, Georgia did not really surprise me. The Braves' biggest rival, after all, is known for being the Mets. We saw it in full display in 2022, but even before that, in the 1990s and 2000s, everyone knew that things were getting heated up between the Braves and the Mets. But then the Braves just got so much better, and obviously 2022, it was put into full force again, when both teams got 101 wins, and Braves wound up clinching the NL East over the Mets, which meant that the Mets got knocked out of the wild card just by having 101 wins. Braves also didn't make it that far, losing in the divisional round to the Phillies. I think what my question really came from was, how far did Braves territory extend? And the answer surprised me. Now, I knew that South Carolina was probably going to be in Braves territory. And I know that in North Carolina, they have teams for every single sport except for baseball. So you probably don't have that many baseball fans in North Carolina anyway, considering they have their own basketball, football, and hockey teams, but not for baseball. And I was expecting a lot of baseball to go along to Atlanta, which surprised me because normally Charlotte and Atlanta hate each other, the I-85 rivalry. But I guess it could be seen as how when there's no competition, they would support them over, say, the Nationals. Tennessee also surprised me. Now, there's not really that many baseball teams around Tennessee, and I would have almost certainly thought that West Tennessee would fall under Cardinals' influence. Again, they have every single team there except for baseball in Tennessee, with NBA and NHL, NFL and NHL in Nashville, and the NBA is actually in Memphis. But I guess it makes sense why most of the state has no choice but to fall under Atlanta's influence. It just kind of surprised me a little bit. In Florida, the most hated team is the Red Sox. Things are largely amicable against the Miami Marlins, not too strong rivalries, but the Rays hate the Red Sox. So it makes sense why the Red Sox are the most hated team in Florida. So to recap, the Yankees are already the most hated team in 7 states, and there's one more on this list. Red Sox are the most hated in 3 states, New York, New Jersey, and Florida. The Mets are the most hated team in 6 states. And And yeah. By the way, there's only one state in which the Philadelphia Phillies are the most hated team in, West Virginia. This sort of surprised me and sort of didn't, because the West Virginia is largely in Pirates territory, but the Pirates and Phillies aren't that strongly rivals. So it did surprise me a little bit, but it makes somewhat sense. Now, once you get to the deep south states of Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, I was super surprised to find out that their most hated team was the Los Angeles Dodgers. They don't even have baseball in any of those states. Louisiana does have football and basketball to offer, but no baseball. And, like, literally, of all the fan clubs to join, like, why would they pick that one? Now, parts of Louisiana would fall into Houston influence naturally. There isn't really that much other influence to be found in a lot of these states, however. So, you know, it surprised me to find out that they didn't like the Dodgers of all teams. They're probably getting sick of the Dodgers because the Dodgers have made every single postseason since 2013. This included 8 consecutive times clinching the NL West. And when they failed to clinch the NL West in 2021, they still beat the Giants, who won a division. And then they went back to clinching NL West and having a super powerhouse season in 2022. Well, until they lost the divisionals themselves. So they kind of got a taste of their own medicine in that case. So, I embarrassingly forgot what the most hated team in Kentucky is. Although I'm pretty sure I remember now, it's the Cardinals. Cardinals are also the most hated team across Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Nebraska, and Kansas. Some of those states make sense, some of them do not. Like, Illinois makes sense. The Cardinals and the Cubs absolutely hate each other. So it makes sense why it would be, it makes sense why they would hate each other. And with Indianapolis not having a baseball team, it makes sense how Cubs' influence could extend into Indiana. But Ohio? That does not make that much sense to me, in my opinion. I mean, I guess the Reds could also hate the Cardinals. They are a good team, and usually good teams tend to get the most hate from other teams in the division. Also, Nebraska and Kansas surprised me. Not that I was expecting St. Louis influence to extend into Nebraska and Kansas, I wasn't. Kansas seems to largely be under Royals' influence, and while it is true that the Royals don't like the Cardinals, I didn't think it was that strong given how they are intra-league rivals. They actually faced off in the World Series back in '85, but again, you can really only meet up with the other team in the postseason in the World Series, so I didn't see how it could possibly be that intense. That being said, I had no idea which fan club they would fall under. I honestly thought that a lot of Nebraska and Kansas would fall under Denver influence, but that's also the largely unpopulated western half of the state that would do so, hence why it really can't be the Dodgers when you think about it. But don't worry, the Cubs have plenty of hate themselves. Back in 2017, their most hated state was really only one, and it was somehow the state of Arkansas. And while it's still Arkansas, now it's Missouri, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Missouri and Wisconsin absolutely makes sense, because if the Cardinals can't be the Cubs' biggest hater in one particular year, it's got to be the Milwaukee Brewers. The two hate each other. I guess the Cubs resent the Cardinals just a little bit more than they resent the Brewers. So, after that delightful, incidents between the Cubs and the Brewers, and then the Cubs and the Cardinals, Iowa also totally makes sense. The state is pretty much divvied up between the influence of the Brewers, but mostly of the Cardinals. Although you would think that Royals' influence would extend to the state, but I guess not. Des Moines and Kansas City both lie along the I-35 corridor. No road connects Des Moines to St. Louis, however. Still, it does make sense why Iowa would be split between the Cubs' two main rivals, with not a lot of Cubs influence to be found. Arkansas also kind of makes sense how Cardinals' influence would extend that far south. And then once you get to Tennessee, you're really in Braves territory. You're really getting closer to Braves territory. Hence why they hate the Mets the most. Also, the most hated team in Michigan is the Cleveland Guardians, which makes sense because of how much they hate the Detroit Tigers. Much like all Detroit teams, they are not very good, the Tigers. Okay, that was very interesting. So, we haven't even gotten into how the Astros are just so incredibly hated. Because as of right now, the count is at 0, but that count's going to skyrocket up as we progress further west. But first, we do have a few more states to talk about. Minnesota and the Dakotas, their least favorite team is the White Sox. The White Sox' main rival is, in fact, the Minneapolis Twins. And in the Dakotas, again, they're more populated in the eastern half, where they would fall under Minneapolis influence. The western half, where I don't even know whose influence they would fall under, is very sparsely populated. And in Oklahoma, the most hated team is the Astros. My assumption is that there's a lot of Texas Rangers fans there, and as such, the Rangers hate the Astros. They were actually in a close division-leading race back in 2015, and the Rangers won that. So, yeah. Okay. So, what about moving on further on west? At this point, it's pretty much going to be either the Dodgers or the Astros. Although in Texas, the most hated team is the Yankees, mainly because of the big rivalry between the Astros and the Yankees. And the Yankees have called the Astros cheaters on multiple occasions. That's how the big sign-stealing scandal even got into place. A lot of it was because the Yankees were beginning to get suspicious of the team. Although it was also in part due to the Red Sox. Yankees and Red Sox argue about who actually stopped the Astros' reign of terror, so to speak. About sign stealing. So, as far as the West goes, the Astros are the most hated team in California, in Oregon, in Washington, in Idaho, and Montana, and in Hawaii. And I think that's it. I think. In a lot of cases, it makes sense. The Astros will be the most hated team of any ALS team, 2 of which are in Cali, the Angels and the Athletics. 1 of which is in Washington, the Seattle Mariners. And that pretty much covers the entire Pacific Northwest. And even jutting out into Montana would be covered by that influence. Hawaii, I guess, hates the Astros because I guess there's no baseball in Hawaii and there's no way to get baseball to Hawaii. But I guess if they had to root for a team, they'd probably be in the LA fan base. Now, as far as the Dodgers, they have plenty of enemies themselves. Alaska would surprise me because I thought that if Alaska would fall under any influence, it would be Seattle influence, and therefore they would hate the Astros the most. They're also hated in Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah, mainly because of how they fall under either Diamondbacks or Rockies influence. And again, the 2 teams do not like the Dodgers at all. They do not like them. And I guess even jutting up into Wyoming is still in that Denver fan club. And, I think I might have gone to most of the states. Wait, there's one I didn't get to. Nevada. Nevada's most hated team are the San Francisco Giants, which super surprised me because I thought that the San Francisco Giants would have a lot of fans in Nevada. There's no baseball team in Las Vegas, so I thought that, especially in northern Nevada, they would really, be like these, like San Francisco Giants fans in that part of the state. But I guess not. Although I don't know who they would root for.